this exciting episode, it's fathers, Freud, flightiness, and felonies as we complete season trace of Perry Mason. Don't believe me? Well, it's true. D, get it? Oh boy, it's Perry Mason season 3, episode 26, The Case of the Flighty Father. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, give you an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode will review the plot of the episode, we're going by the original air date, and compare that plot with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel it was based on, if applicable. Next, I give you some trivia, an episode theme, and finally a Perry proverb. Pearl of wisdom from the man himself. Before we head to the water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, say it with me, to the law library! Each episode in the law library, we try to answer some legal conundrum that comes up in the episode, so we have some precedents for future cases. In this episode, Trudy Holbrook's got some serious cash now that her mom has died. But as happens in Perryland, a shadowy, deserting dad shows up. And since $10 million involved, you know the vultures will be out. That's why you gotta have a trust.
What kind of a will did your mother leave?
Everything goes to me, I guess, that hasn't already been put in trust. I get control of most all of it by the time I'm 21. Mr. Mason, is it true that a child can ask for anyone she wants as her guardian?
In California? Yes, if the child is over 14.
Okay, so let's check out the legal claim. At age 14 in California, you can choose your own guardian if the price is right. We'll want this precedent in our pocket for later episodes like the case of the lonely eloper and the case of the lawful Lazarus. First, let's distinguish between two types of legal guardianship. There's guardianship of a person, aka custody. Then there's guardianship of an estate, aka property. As you can imagine, the subject of age and guardian preference comes up a lot in divorce cases. At age 14, a child in California does have the legal right to express a preference about which custodian they live with. The law does not, however, bind the judge to the child's preference. As for the estate, children 12 or older can ask the court to appoint a specific guardian. Another law library precedent we get in this episode, the age at which the death penalty becomes a suitable punishment.
She's had her 18th birthday, hasn't she?
That's right, Della. They can ask the death penalty.
Except for the case of the Spanish Cross, Perry hasn't really gotten close to defending a minor for murder, has he? Trivia question. Who is Perry's youngest client? We better get to the plot of this episode. The case of the Flighty Father. Louise Holbrook was dead to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. That's a little Christmas Story allusion to all you Chuck D fans out there. Anywho, Trudy Holbrook, Louise's daughter, mourns. And some guy watches from the wings. Cut to the luxurious Holbrook estate. The man is there again, hiding in the hedges. Trudy catches him, confronts him, and voila, we have a title, folks.
Who are you? This is the third time I've seen you out here. What do you want? I saw you at my mother's funeral, too. What were you doing there? Who are you?
Trudy, I'm your father.
Well, Trudy's heir to $10 million, and her family's kind of worried about the whole mysterious Flighty father swooping in and taking the money that, let's just go ahead and say it, they wanted to swoop in and take. There's Donald Evanson, the head of the company, and I guess Trudy's uncle. Then there's Wally Harper, another cousin and arch schnookneck. The difference between Wally and Donald being that Wally doesn't try to hide his craven pursuits. Their source of inside intelligence? The chauffeur David.
Take it easy, Uncle. David works for Trudy, not you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper.
Besides, as one neck breather to another, I'd like to hear the rest of this.
They had supper together last night, and now lunch again today.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, Trudy has tea with Ditzy Dad, sprinkles in some Freudian analysis, and gives us reason to pause about the veracity of old J. Holbrook's parentage.
You know, it's funny my not remembering about that apartment house. The place where it is, I mean. We had a lawn out there for tennis.
Croquet.
Oh, yes, of course. Croquet.
Then the real moment of truth comes. Cousin Lawrence shows up. Cousin Larry. Of course, we're finally going to get confirmation that this J. Holbrook guy's legit or a fraud, right? Nope.
I wouldn't say the time had affected you much, sir. Though I guess I may look a little different.
You couldn't prove it by me. Didn't she tell you? I've been blind for the past 5 years.
Trudy does the wise thing and seeks out Perry. She's still too obsessed with this whole Freud thing. Perry, he's not interested in her interpretations, but he does agree to take the case.
You see, in Freudian terms, my father...
I understand, Trudy. You're just a girl who never had a father.
Mr. Mason, please, couldn't you help me?
Of course I'll help you, Trudy.
Cut to Cousin Larry hiring a private eye to investigate the Holbrook dilemma.
No bonus for finding something you can use against him? Sir, I had plenty on this man once before and didn't use it. All I want is the truth, you understand? Just get the facts.
And now, Wally trying to put the screws on J. Holbrook number 1.
$50,000. How much do you want? How much? I don't understand you.
$50,000, plus a one-way ticket to Europe, wherever you want to go. Listen, Mr. Holbrook, this isn't just a bribe. Trudy saw a lawyer. The family has seen 50. This will be the biggest legal tangle in history.
Our PI digs up another J. Holbrook. Now things are getting really complicated.
They're all Trudy, aren't they? Pigtails, horse shows, society stuff. Say, that's quite a collection you made through the years. I don't know what you want here, sir. But I know nothing, absolutely, of anyone named Trudy or Cousin Lawrence. Do you have any idea who this guy might be? He looks a little like me, doesn't he? The guy's in Los Angeles polishing a $10 million apple, pretending to be you.
The case hits the newspapers. Paul wants to know what Perry's gonna do. Perry's gonna grab a cow, Paul.
I thought you didn't want to talk to her family yet, in case you wanted to file suit to change Trudy's guardianship.
All we can do now is take the bull by the horns.
Just one problem. This cow's been gored. Lawrence King dead. The suspect, Trudy. Now it's a game of to tell the truth. Perry interviews J. Holbrook number 1 first. He wants to help. Perry's advice?
I think you can help her most by staying away from her. By going straight to the police. By telling them all you know.
Now another J. Holbrook comes a knocking at Perry's door. He wants to help too. Oh boy.
Mason, I see no reason to going into this. I want your word to get Trudy out of here, that's all.
What do you mean?
I haven't seen her, and I'm not going to. I want the girl looking forward, not back. I want Trudy to get away from every bit of that family just as soon as she possibly can.
In court, Berger establishes the whole $10 million angle. Meanwhile, a dude enters court that you just know is going to be a key witness. His name, Gus Nichols. His task, identify J. Holbrook numero dos as the real J. Holbrook. Trudy's not too happy about all that.
That's the bird I locked up right there. He's J. Holbrook, all right.
No!
But Perry smells foul play. In fact, Cousin Larry was pretty foul, if you ask me. Turns out Cousin Larry was framing J. Holbrook #1 with the help of J. Holbrook #2, and now it's time for Perry to start turning up the heat.
Maybe I'm what you say I am, but those notes were there when I left. King's bundle of notes was still there. I didn't kill him, I tell you. I didn't!
Take that man in custody.
All this leads to, wait a minute, the chauffeur did it? Huh. What about the farm on Evanston, Wally, the fake J, the shady PI? Color me surprised.
The person who knew where everyone was on the night of the murder, who knew when and why Trudy went to Lawrence King's house and what car she was driving, and who perhaps saw a chance for millions in blackmail. The person to whom those notes in the safe would have been a motive for murder. Where are those notes now, David?
Well, I'll help in any way I can. I've always tried to cooperate with everyone.
Trudy and her papa talk things over with Della and Perry as the episode ends. Thankfully, there's no Freudian slips. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive into an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul for this episode involves all of Trudy's Freud references.
You see, in Freudian terms, Mother was what they
There are
call...
always 2 sides to everything.
He always blamed himself for not making things work in the past. You see, in Freudian terms, my father...
I understand, Trudy.
You see, in Freudian terms, Trudy is what we call a name dropper. Our Paul prompt: where did Trudy get her Freud knowledge? A college psychology class? Her therapist? Where would you have imbibed old Sig? And more than that, would you have imbibed Ziggy straight from the source? In translation, of course, I don't think Trudy's reading German. Or through a popularizer, Ernest Jones or somebody like that. Let me know what you find. I won't ascribe your success or failure to your unconscious drive to get the approval of an authority figure. I promise. Our Della for this episode is, well, I was tempted to do old Henry Beckman, a.k.a. David the Chauffeur, because he was Casey Rogers' husband on Peyton Place, Casey being the focus of our last episode's Della Deep Dive. But we'll have 3 other chances to look at Beckman. We'll only have this episode with Ann Benton, our defendant, Trudy Holbrook.
But I'm different from Mother in one thing. When I want something, I fight for it.
So here's 10 about Ann. Number 1, born Ann Christine Benson, 1932, New York State. Number 2, wanted to be an actress from the time she was small. She was a cruel stepsister in a Cinderella. That apparently loomed large in her legend. Number 3, attended Swarthmore and then the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. Number 4, she got a small part in the traveling production of Witness for the Prosecution. Couldn't find more info. I suspect she appeared in the role that Ruta Lee played in the 1957 film. Number 5, married Dr. Bernard McDonald of Los Angeles in 1957. They had a son, Brian, in 1958. McDonald went to Paris to work and study in 1959 and stayed behind. Number 6, in 1959, she was on Father Knows Best. 1960, she was in an Elvis movie alongside Dolores Del Rio called Flaming Star. 1960, of course, was also the Perry episode. The next 2 years brought episodes of Bonanza and Checkmate. Number 7, in 1960, Dr. Mack came back from Europe and Anne asked for a divorce. Number 8, subsequently, she was plagued by schizophrenia. No screen credits post-1962. Her career is basically this tiny window in the late 50s and early 60s. Number 9, her son Brian commits suicide in 1979. And number 10, her mother and sister care for her until her death in 2005. Tragedy for Anne. If you've got more info, let me know. Our Perry for this episode involves our intrepid hero's rep, a recurring motif in season 3. In an exchange with Trudy, Perry asks why she's consulted him. She gives him an answer.
There must have been a great many family lawyers available to you.
I want somebody I can trust, that's why.
Trudy doesn't appear to have a backstory with Perry, but she knows she can trust this guy, whether it's a family case or not. Speaking of family, our theme for this episode is, you guessed it, fathers. Let us count the bad dads we've had this season of ours. The case of the Blushing Pearls, Hudson Nichols. The case of Paul Drake's Dilemma, Henry Dameron. The case of the ominous outcast, the never seen but looming large Lynn Aberdeen. If we go looking for good dads, we've only got the case of the prudent prosecutor's defendant Jeff Pike as the redeemable dad in the bunch. So we end the season with a dilemma. Who's the real dad and who's the better dad? Maybe different answers. It appears J number 2 is the real article, 75% of the way through the episode, but Trudy's already emotionally invested in J number 1. We could go to Trudy on it and call this cathexis. That is, the emotional investment in a person in order to resolve a father complex. Wouldn't Freud be proud? Or we could just say what Perry hints at, that our man Perry is not just a family lawyer. No, he's family. Perry's not just great at helping you find your dad. He's great at being a surrogate dad until that guy shows up. And he's the man who can help bridge the gap between who Trudy emotionally wants to be her dad and who Trudy can factually prove is her dad. Trudy and Jay are in good hands. And what do you know? It just happens that Jay number 1 happens to be the real dad, too.
Listen to her. She'll make something out of me yet.
Of course, a father.
Now it's time for a Perry proverb. Trudy really is sold on Perry. As the episode ends, she gives him a huge compliment. Della expresses some faux skepticism. Perry agrees with Trudy, tongue planted firmly in his cheek.
Everybody can't be perfect, like Mr. Mason is.
Perfect,
That's what I keep telling you.
It's not Perry's style to have a proverb like, I told you so. It's more his way to gently remind you he knows Trudy's claim about his infallibility is just fun rather than a brag. Perry knows you won't get the joke the first time. He'll just keep telling it. And eventually, 3 seasons in, you'll get it. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
No, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Every time we visit the water cooler, we give you a deleted scene. Sequences that, for whatever reason, didn't make the final cut. This time we've got 3. A montage of Trudy's Freudian explanations. Why David the chauffeur doesn't have a last name. The use of the term neck breather by Wally. The fact that the literally blind cousin Lawrence was mortally blind as well. The reason that the suspicious PI never shows back up. Inevitably, Perry cuts Trudy off every single time and offers more mundane, but ultimately more convincing interpretations. B, the 2 J. Holbrooks find each other hiding in the hedges. Neither can win in a skirmish. They're so similar. The scene takes 10 minutes and ends in a draw. C, David the chauffeur commits a series of crimes and ends each one with a puppy dog look. If I can assist in any way, vandalism on the Holbrook grounds, burns down a convenience store, commits mail fraud, commandeers an NBA point shaving scandal. I've always tried to cooperate with everyone. You're going to have a lot of time to cooperate with the authorities, says Trag, and scene. Our Paul prompt from last time. We asked about anti-collision technology, the big focus of the case of the irate inventor. Aunt Myra writes in to say, my car displays obstacle detected and makes a noise if it thinks I'm too close to something. I think it sees the car in back of me too. The cruise control slows down automatically if it thinks I'm too close to the car in front of me. I like those features. Cool groove. Here's a little bit of history. In cars, the tech is called collision avoidance systems, Early warning systems were attempted as early as the late 1950s. An example is the Cadillac, which developed a prototype vehicle named the Cadillac Cyclone that used new radar technology to detect objects in front of the car with the radar sensors mounted inside nose cones. Too costly to manufacture. The first modern forward collision avoidance system for cars, patented in 1990. If you look up anti-collision device, you find that it's patented technology that dates from 2001 that performs automatic train protection for Indian railways. That's the Continental Indian. There is an airborne collision avoidance system, usually pronounced ACAS, which operates independently of ground-based equipment and air traffic control and warning pilots of the presence of other aircraft. Much of the technology being applied to both military and general aviation today has been undergoing development by NASA since the 1980s. All this looks to me like Perry was ahead of its time. If James Frazier had managed to solve this particular problem, he and Bobby would have been rolling in the dough. Now, let's get to some listener letters. Well, the listener letters for this episode involve my inability to post the correct audio of our last episode. I'm so sorry. The clips were missing from the first half of the case of the irate inventor. I fixed it. I even uploaded a new episode to YouTube, so that one was up as well. Thanks for letting me know. I'll try not to let it happen again. I throw myself upon the mercy of the Perry fandom court. You got a comment on this episode or the pod in general? You can write me at theperrypod@gmail.com. Well, that's the end of season 3. Can you believe it? Before we move on, I'll be finishing up season 1 defendants tournament that I left in the lurch at the end of 2022. You can expect mini episodes each week until I finish the tournament. I really hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for listening. And in case someone hasn't told you lately, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!